think about how preservation works. I now want to use that kind of background to introduce you to Patchwork Girl. Before I do, I want to ask do we have time? I'm curious to hear where you are. We have till 1:45. Can I just ask you in small groups, wherever you are, just quickly, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. I'd like to hear like takeaways. Like what are some of the main things that you've learned so far, things you have follow-up questions on, and things that you're eager to hear more about, just really quickly, okay? Go.
A few minutes later.
Are you guys ready? You guys have good points in the back? Yeah.
So for me, it was the intermediality, like the connection, and that like literature is not just text, but that we can connect like music and the visual, and that these medias are not that like strictly divided as we might believe.
And not only that, but they never have been. Like, remember, I can't go easily back to that slide of the medieval manuscript. But the idea that, like, as you said in the back, that maybe this was more art than literature, that suggests that you have been trained that literature is text and art is visual. That's just not true, never has been. Hieroglyphs are image and text, right? The original forms of written storytelling were image. Graphic novels are not something new. They're something new that we've decided to take seriously, but that doesn't mean they're new, right? In part, some of these things are informed by the fact that we are paying attention to digital media, right? So that's fantastic. Start thinking about your own biases and how you've been trained. That's why taking Joey's class, it's so great that Intro to Literature is introducing you to this stuff. Most 220s don't do that. Actually, most the grad students are here because most of the grad classes don't do this, right? But you all are writing and reading all the time. You just perhaps aren't thinking about it as literature. How many of you produce, now if I say that TikTok, that Instagram, that video games and programming, that those are forms that can produce literature, how many of you are producing literature? How many of you are reading literature in those forms? Yeah, a lot, and you can raise them higher so I can see. How many of you are reading literature if we include all of those digital formats? Okay, great. It's not just Moby Dick, although come join my Moby Dick class, it's great. Right? You are all active, avid readers and producers of literature. All right, take that. Okay, start there. Now, just briefly want to introduce you to this strange beast, monster, truly, that you're going to be reading, and we're going to be reading, my grad students, in a few weeks. Patchwork Girl by Shelley Jackson. You're all reading Frankenstein right now?
Just finished.
Did you like it? Isn't it extraordinary? Isn't it so different than you thought it would be? Yeah, okay, all right, good. Well, in 1995, let me just remind you that there's no World Wide Web as you know it. There is no Google search engine as you know it. There are certainly no cell phones or massive video game platforms as you know it. Basically, this is a different world. It's a different world and it's a different digital world. And we have this artist, Shelley Jackson, who's an experimental writer who comes along and writes this story inspired by, I'll go back here, what if Mary Shelley Frankenstein were true? What if Mary Shelley herself made the monster and not the fictional Dr. Frankenstein? And what if the monster was a woman and fell in love with Mary Shelley and traveled to America? In other words, what if this was rewritten using these new technologies in a kind of love letter to the novel Frankenstein, but for a new audience and new moment? It was written in StorySpace, which was a platform developed by a technologist, an artist, classicist. It was published by the only publisher back then who was publishing electronic literature, Eastgate Systems, which was a little house in Watertown, Massachusetts. Now all of this is obsolete in some ways. I own, and if you go into the eLit studio, you will see all versions of this work. I have the floppy, the disk, multiple memory sticks, and now you can download it. So what you're going to see is actually a different version of the original, but it's an emulation that does pretty well. This is Shelley Jackson. She was a big deal in the 90s, actually. And this work is a big deal. There's a reason why you're reading this rather than others. One, it's decidedly literary. It's based on, inspired by Frankenstein. Einstein. 2, it's a work that, that has been identified as part of the canon of electronic literature. And Catherine Hales, who is the person who writes the book on electronic literature, what is it? She uses it in 2000, so nearly 25 years ago, to explain what digital textuality is and how you would close read it. That's her tutor text for how we deal with it, for all English people in literary studies. How are you gonna deal with this thing called digital textuality? Let me show you using Patchwork Girl. And I'll also say that there's a major grant funded, the NEH has funded preservation activities so that we're not so sad about losing some of these works, and Patchwork Girl is one of the first to be archived. So, what you will encounter is a work that is a hypertext, meaning think back to those first screens I showed you, which were the blue screen where you clicked on a blue link, because back in the day, blue links signified what in HTML and hypertext? Blue means click, right? Now you can click on all sorts of colors, but back then, literally to anyone in the 90s, blue meant click. All right, so you will encounter screens like this. This is what it's going to look like. I'm gonna show you a video. We're gonna walk through it together, but I just wanna show you. These are, they're called Lexias. These boxes, they're little pop-up windows, which probably won't be pop-up on your version, but back in the day, they popped up and layered the screen. Do you know what a pop-up window is? Have you encountered it? Okay, these are little windows. The language for it is Lexia. And it will give you image and text, as you see, but also a way to navigate this very confusing, non-linear experience, like this map right here. So this map shows you the title page and then shows you which windows or Lexias are linked to it. I'm just showing you some of these navigational elements which you'll encounter, and you will be confused by. So don't start reading Patchwork Girl on a day when you're grumpy and hangry and like not into it. Like, you need to be in the right space, because this is about being disoriented. This is about questioning what is art, what is literature, how do we read, what is a canon, what stories get told, why do women's stories not get told, why is the female monster destroyed, what does it mean to be creative, to create, to procreate, all of these things, right? This is a work that's going to question all of it. So let me just quickly show you. Okay, we're on the screen. So this is the NEH project that is saving the works by videotaping the author reading the work. This is Shelley Jackson.
Big image, paint, if anyone knows what that is. It's just like a splash page.
I'm actually going to start
Girl herself.
here. This is the title page.
We'd like to just go over there. I've done that personally. Just actually opening the theater.
Yeah.
So, but that was good.
Alright, so I think we're ready to start with the.
Okay.
Okay, here she
What
goes.
choices I'm making about where to go, right?
Can you hear her?
Reading from
Yes.
Okay. Alright, so shall I go?
You should go.
Okay. Alright, so we have these 5 paths we can take, and I want them to be pretty evenly weighted for the reader. So a reader could find herself somewhere that would be quite disorienting potentially, and that's part of my plan. But for the purposes of this reading, I'm going to start somewhere that feels like a story. And in fact, I'm going to start with a chunk called Birth. My birth takes place more than once in the fleeing of a bygone monster from a muddy hole like corpse light under the needle and under the pen. Or it took place not at all. But if I hope to tell a good story, I must leapfrog out of the muddle of my several births to the day I parted for the last time with the author of my being and set out to write my own destiny. So
So I'm going to pause her there, and I'm going to show you the work itself. But this is available to you, and all of this, actually, we are creating a hub on the computer in the eLit studio that will contain all of this. including, I think, this lecture that I'm giving, so if you want to go back and take a look at it. But on your own screen, when you open Patchwork Girl, sorry, you enter Patchwork Girl, you will have this frontispiece, this image, and then you see my mouse clicker. You can click anywhere. I'm going to click. Here's the title page. What would you like me to click on? A graveyard, a journal, a quilt, a story of broken accents. Quick.
A graveyard.
A graveyard. Okay. You may continue to flesh out this planning study, use links to interconnect documents, and make it easier to move place to, where would you like me to click next? Head? I am buried here. You can resurrect me, but only piecemeal. If you want to see the whole, you will have to sew me together yourself. Would you like me to click anything here or over here? Text. Here, headstone. Here lies a head, trunk, arms, right and left, and legs, right and left, as well as diverse organs appropriately disposed. May they rest in peace. Where would you like to go? Here are all the organs. See that on the map? You can navigate over here. Where would you like to click? Sorry? Left leg. My left leg belonged to Jane, a nanny who harbored under her durable gray dresses and sensible undergarments a remembrance of a less sensible time. A tattoo of a ship and a legend come back to me. Nanny knew some stories that astonished her charges, and though the ship on her thigh blurred and grew faint and blue with distance, until it seemed that the currents must have long ago finished their work, undoing its planks one by one with unfailing patience. She always took the children to the wharf when word came that a ship was docking, and many a sailor greeted her by name. My leg is always twitching, jumping, joggling. It wants to go places. It has had enough of waiting. One more? Where would you like to go?
Organ.
Organs. This urn guards a heart, a liver, lungs, stomach, guts, and vein. Are you getting a sense? This is exploratory. This is link and node. You can navigate in multiple ways. Here we're on the map, but you see my clicker up here? We can go to outline or chart. Some of these are new. And so you can find your way through. I would suggest that as you're reading, especially as you're close reading, that you pay attention to the titles of the lexias, these things up here, you see? That you write them down so that you have somewhere to come back and discuss with in your class. Organs is where you want to go, okay? And that way you can find it again.